Starting this podcast was an unexpected step of obedience of something that God has called me to do. Through this podcast, I will be interviewing ordinary people who have seen and experienced God move in extraordinary ways throughout their lives. I pray that this will build your faith and encourage you to testify of God's goodness in your everyday lives. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Testify of God's Goodness podcast. I have my sister Serena here with us this morning. So I'm really excited for you to share your testimony. I know it's out of your comfort zone and it's really hard, which I was telling her 90% of the people that are on here are super uncomfortable to share their testimony, but God just continues to lay it on their heart. So I'm really excited. Just for you to share it with the listeners for the first time. Okay, so tell us about yourself. So your work or callings in life, your family, and then anything else that you'd like to share.
So I'm the oldest of four, obviously. I'm the
youngest.
She's the youngest. She's the baby of the family.
Yeah.
We grew up in Hampshire County. I settled back down in Hampshire County. I married my husband almost 17 years ago now.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I remember, I was probably in sixth grade when y'all got married.
Middle school, yeah.
I know, I was in eighth grade when you had Autumn.
Yeah, so
I became an aunt when I was 14, and now Autumn is 15.
15.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So we have four beautiful babies together, and
Do you want to say their ages?
sure, they are, my oldest, Autumn, is 15, and then I have three boys who are 11, 9, and 6.
They're so sweet. I love your kids.
So, and the funny thing, and it'll probably come up later in our talk, but Duke and I are very private and quiet and not very social people, and our kids are, well, for the majority. Autumn is not really outgoing anymore, but
Yeah.
all my kids don't know a stranger. They love people.
Yeah.
Everybody's their best friend immediately. So
It's true.
God often uses them to push me out of my comfort zone and meet new people. So yeah, it's funny how God works through your children.
It is. Even yesterday, and I try to pray, and I'm not always great at being obedient in this way. I try to be, but I say, God, if there's anybody that you want me to, talk to or pray with or anything like that, place them in my path. Well, yesterday, Madeline got shots, and then I had to go get blood work for pregnancy and everything. And there was this person in there that Dakota and I had gone to high school with. And I didn't know if they recognized me or not, but they had their grandmother in there. And then Aiden, he's Madeline would have never done this at one, but he just walked up to him and was trying to talk to him and everything. And I was and he was laughing. And I was we went to high school with you, didn't we? So I was able to just talk with him and ask, what they're doing in life and encourage them. So it's funny how our kids can open those doors.
Yes, very much.
Yeah. Okay, so what is your testimony? So when you saw your need for Christ as your Savior, when you accepted Christ, and then the transformation that came from that.
So like I told you earlier, I don't have a big come to Jesus moment like some people do. We grew up in church. I've always known God. There's never not been a time that I can remember where I've ever not known who God was and what he does for us. I gave my life to Christ around 12 years old, I think, and was baptized. And for me, my walk with God is kind of like a winding country road. There's been times where I walk very closely with him, and then there's times where I've maybe drifted a little further than I should. So through high school and in college, I was pretty active in the church. In college, I even went on a Habitat for Humanity trip, which was a wonderful experience.
I remember that.
On spring break.
Yeah, it was over my birthday because your whole group called me and sang me happy birthday.
Oh.
And I was still in elementary school, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world because, you look up to, you're 9 years older, so I always looked up to you in so many ways. So, yeah, I remember that trip.
That's funny. Yeah, I don't remember doing that, but it's funny how different things impact different people. But yes, that was a wonderful trip. So if anybody ever has the chance to do something like that, I don't even know if they still do it.
I think so.
Like that.
Yeah.
But that was a great trip. And then Duke and I got married the end of my third year of college. And we started going to a church up in Burlington where we lived at the time, a Baptist church like we grew up in, had a wonderful pastor. He was very much Duke's kind of people, you know, he was a hunter, he was an outdoorsman, very, you know, sporty. And he preached in a way that really spoke to Duke. And so about a year later, he was saved and was baptized. And then shortly after that, Duke was called to service. He was in the Army at the time. And we decided that since we had not been married very long, it had been less than a year, that I would be more comfortable living closer to home. So we moved back down here to Hampshire County.
Were you pregnant yet?
No.
Okay.
No, we didn't get pregnant until he came home.
Okay.
But, so we moved back down here, and then I dropped him off, and it turned out that he needed surgery on his knee. And at the time, that was 2009-ish. I think he was expected to go to Afghanistan. At the time, they had said, look, we don't have the time and we don't have the resources to do the surgery for you. We're going to send you home. Yeah. So I, as a newly married girl, and we don't have anybody in our close, immediate family that has served in that way.
Yeah, we don't.
So that was terrifying for me. So I was selfishly grateful that he was sent home. And then we got pregnant shortly after that. But since we had moved back down to Hampshire County, we had tried a couple churches, couldn't find one that quite fit where Duke was comfortable because he did not grow up in church. Yeah. So that was new for him. It was uncomfortable, as it is for many people. And so we just kind of trickled off. We stopped going. Every time I've had a kid, I've said, oh, I'm going back to church, and I'll go back for a little bit, and then I've drifted away again. And, you know, I had all these excuses for we were busy, or our work schedules were crazy, or, you know, that was the only day that Duke had off, and I wanted to spend it with him. Or, you know, there's so many, you can make any excuse.
I'm sure that's really relatable for the listeners, too, because, like, in our world today, we do have a lot of busyness. And I was just reading a quote this morning, and I can be guilty of this too. It says, if the devil cannot destroy you, he will distract you and then sit back and watch as you destroy yourself, as you, you know, are pulled in a million different directions, and especially if those directions are away from God. And we were just talking before we hit record how, like, Serena was asking me how this pregnancy was, and I was like, I really feel like it was God's way of humbling me in a lot of ways, because this has been my hardest pregnancy, and I've just been insanely exhausted. And when I do overdo it, I'll get like pains in my stomach. And so, like, God is really asking me to, like, rest and care for myself more. And in that rest, I've been able to, like, spend some extra time with him, whether that's like reading the word or reading books about him that help me to learn more, or spending time in prayer. And, like, I think in the hustle and bustle of our world, like, it is easy to get distracted. And, like, a lot of times when it seems like a good thing, we want to say yes to everything. And again, I can be guilty of this too. But I've been trying to pray, like, God, I do not want to just do a good thing. I want to do, like, God's best. And so, like, show us what we need to step into and show us what we need to step away from. And that stepping into, I will do that all day long. Like, I'm like, where can I serve? What can I do? Like, I'm all in. But that stepping away thing is super humbling for me. It is like a hit at my pride. It's just really hard for me to let go of good things. But I know, like, I've really been learning lately, like, of course, my family needs to be my main ministry. And so pouring into them and spending that intentional time with them, and having to step away from things so that I can serve my family better and take care of myself in the process is something that God's really been teaching me. So it is hard. And I think just praying that prayer to recognize, God, what do you want for me? I don't want to just do what's good in the world's view, because the world is broken for a reason. Like, it's because we are always on the go, especially in our, I know people listen all over the world, but like in our American culture, in the Western culture, it is very productivity driven and like trying to keep up with the Joneses and everything else. Like, and so just trying to live that life surrendered to Christ is very countercultural.
Yeah. And I do want to say that, like, I thought I could do it on my own, you know. My kids know God. We've talked about God.
Yeah.
We have devotionals. You know, we pray at dinner time. So it's not like I was shunning the church.
Yeah.
You know, and you and Mom, especially the two of you, would always invite me. We'd come to different functions. We went to Vacation Bible School.
Yeah.
It was not an intentional, like, no, I don't want to go.
Right. Yes.
There's excuses. I'm too busy. But we found over the course of time, like, when we try to get too busy, bad things would happen on Sundays for us. Like a truck caught on fire that we were working on a Sunday. The accident that he had with his thumb before we got married was on a Sunday.
Wow.
And we eventually realized, look, I know God's not doing those things to us, but we need to listen when he's saying, don't do stuff like that on Sundays. Like, take your rest day.
Yeah.
Because
We are back. So actually, Serena got a call from her oldest daughter, Autumn. This is our first time having a live audience. Autumn's here with us, but she had to pick her up from track practice, and I was like, it's fine, I got a load of laundry done, so that's real life. But we are back, and we were talking about how on Sundays, you just like saw random things happening, and you felt like that was God's way of getting a hold of you and like telling you, you know, take a Sabbath, prioritize, you know, going to church and stuff. And we had experienced the same thing when Dakota and I were dating. I remember he had consistently been going to church with me. And then there was one Sunday he was like behind on work. So he was like, I'll just get this one thing done. I'll meet up with you after. It'll be fine. And I was like, okay. Well, he did. And then like, I think his truck broke down, or like one of his machines just completely broke. And it was like not a nice break either. And he was like, I really feel like that was God's way of getting a hold of me and like telling me to prioritize this. So after that, he did start going consistently. So it's funny, like God has a way of getting a hold of us and like getting our attention, because he is a good and loving father, and he knows and he wants what is best for us. So it's not anything about control. It is because like he created the Sabbath for us. He said, I did not create I might blotch this verse, but the man for Sabbath, but the Sabbath for the man. So he does, like, you think about us with our kids, we wouldn't want to see our kids like wearing themselves thin. You know what I mean? We wouldn't see our kids like going astray or anything. And that's how he is with us. Like, he wants us to take care of ourselves. He wants to pull us near to him. He wants us to spend time with him out of love. It's not out of control. And I think we can get that mixed up sometimes. So think of it, I've learned a lot about God when it comes to being a mom. And I know that like his love for us is so much greater than our love for our children. And he's really just like, they're his children. He's just entrusted us with them. And that kind of ties into, you know, one of the questions that we can jump to real quick. What has being a mom and a wife taught you about God?
So God speaks to me, I feel like, through my kids.
Yeah.
And it will be maybe something simple that they say or a question that they ask.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's something simple, and sometimes it's like a hard God question.
Yeah.
You know? And, you know, I mentioned, you know, I thought I could do it on my own, you know. My kids know God. We talk about God, but not with the consistency that you get from like going to church like we did when we grew up.
Yeah.
So beginning of this year, I had decided, look, we're going back. So the kids and I started going back to church. And it's been wonderful for them and for me. But, you know, in that time where I was like working up my nerve to start going back to church and stop making those excuses, there were little things where, like, we had kind of gotten out of the habit of praying at dinner because we were all busy. And so we didn't always eat together. You know, they ate here and I ate, you know, later when Duke got home, because we were busy with sports and football. We didn't get home till like 8:30. So we just ate and dinner, bed, you know. So I got a message from, I think it was Sadie. I think her mom had told her before I got a message from the teacher. She did message me later, but Jackson they did, what am I thankful for, you know, little art project at school. And Jackson said, I'm thankful for God.
Oh,
and it was in a period, I know, it was in a period where we weren't really talking about God very much, you know? And our hearts weren't as focused on him. And so that really was a reminder, hey, I am pulling you back. You need to get your children to church. You know, but I find that like their innocence, you know, and they know, they're born knowing God.
Yes.
You know, they really are. And then the distractions of the world come in, and like I did, you know, I let other things get in the way. But it's little things from them where I hear God speaking to me the loudest.
That's awesome.
And, you know, almost shouting at me at times, like, go to church. You know, your children need this. And it's something that I can't give them. Like, they don't always listen the best to their parents. Children in general. A lot of parents, I'm sure, can relate to that. Like, they need to hear it from somebody else. And I'm blessed. I have a big family. You've talked to Autumn on many occasions about different things where I couldn't give her what she needed, give her the advice that she needed to hear. But that church family really is like important. But it's taken a long time for God to reel me back in because, you know, we're stubborn and we make excuses and we let the busyness of the world. I mean, that's our culture. You know, we let the busyness get in the way. So I find that I have to work very hard to make intentional time to like stay at home and be still and not go to all the things or not go to all the birthday parties. So if we have missed a birthday party, it's not that we don't want to be there, but sometimes we just need some time at home.
And I started doing that, like, so when, especially before we had kids, I mean, we've got how many nieces and nephews? You've got 4, Jade and Sadie have 1, and then Rain and Casey have 2. And I'd go to every single sporting event. And now I'm more gracious with myself, and I'm like, and I love doing that. I love it so much. I love being out there and cheering them on, and I genuinely do. But now it's my goal to make it to at least one of their sports a season. So and if I make it to more, that's great. But that's always my that's my minimum. I'm definitely going to try to do that. And everybody's so understanding because you guys have kids and you know how busy it is.
Yeah, we definitely get it.
Something that God has taught me, not only like his love for us, how we love our kids, but also like, and I know, you know, you've been in the toddler stage and you know how much that like they just love you so much. The toddler stage is so hard, but one of the blessings is like how much they look up to you and how much they love you. Like the other night, I was just laying on the couch and we were watching a movie and it was almost bedtime, and the kids, like Madeline's gotten to the point where sometimes she'll fall asleep on Dakota, but like Aiden always has to have me, and then she was laying on top of me, he was laying right in front of me right here on the couch, and Dakota's like, how does it feel to be so loved? And like, and then earlier they're both wanting to sit in my lap in our little tiny rocking chair, and just really like always needing me and how much they love me. And like Aiden the other day, I was just making, this was a couple months ago, but I was making a cup of coffee and And he just was like there just staring at me. He was like, Mommy. And just, he was just in awe of me, just like doing simple things. And how much more should we be like that with God? And like just sitting and being in awe of him and all that he's created. Like look outside at his creation, or, you know, look at the wonderful babies that he made and for us, and like how he is like currently knitting this baby together in my womb. And just to sit back, and again, the busyness of the world can keep us from doing that, but just trying to be more in awe of God, how like our toddlers are in all of us. They're so reliant on us. We should be that way with God. We should seek him. We should lean more into him and rely on him more, because like his ways, the Bible says, are higher than our ways. Like his plans are better than ours, because like, again, he knows what's coming. Like he knows what's best for us, and it's hard for us to like release that control, but it's so much more abundant of a life when we are able to do that. Anything else in your testimony that you wanted to share?